Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 135 of Into the Outer Realms. I'm your interstellar host wearing our company colors tonight, which our esteemed colleague, longtime friend, Emily Mittermeier is with us tonight. Of course, she's an iTour contributor, a member of the Red Thread Collective, and she is a traveling spirit. That is her Instagram page, which she'll tell you all about, where she puts these stunning photos that you're going to see tonight. She was on this amazing road trip. So anyway, I'm your interstellar host, Joey Medea, taking you into the Outer Realms, where the paranormal and supernatural are just the normal and the natural. There's some very exciting stuff going on. I have a text out to someone to possibly make a big announcement. We'll see if that comes in during the night. Little bit of housekeeping. As we're growing the show, I'm getting contacted by more and more publicists. So we're going to go back to having quite a few guests. And I think that I've really learned over these past couple of years how best to do that, how to engage them ahead of time, write reviews of their books, get in dialogue with them, and have more of a conversation. We're going to continue to do that. We're going to have great people like Mark Fiorentino come back, Wes Roberts come back. I'm going to introduce you to amazing people. You may know their works. It's all going to be exciting. So as we're growing things, I'm going to ask a couple of things of you. Emily is a contributor to our Patreon page and has been for several years, and that money goes towards keeping the channel up and running. You can find that as Joey Medea, JoeyMadia, at Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can help us. $12 a year actually goes a long way the way we have this set up. And as you go up a couple dollars, $5, $10, whatever a month, you open up all these goodies so you can get our research packets and you can spend one-on-one time with me discussing cases, or if you're a writer, we can work on that or anything like that. So you might want to check that. I have to get better about that. We have merchandise on Threadless and on Redbubble. And what we're trying to do is grow the YouTube channel. That's where we seem to have the best activity and benefit. So consider subscribing to our YouTube channel and also watching the show from YouTube. You can still leave comments. You can do all those great things. But the traffic equates to things that will help really grow the show, honor our guests, because quite frankly, some guests don't come on shows if they don't like your numbers. So we want to get guests that are really going to interest you, that are really making a difference. We've had some amazing guests. That doesn't happen. It's happened once with only one publicist and all the time where the person said, well, I just don't like their views, so why should I do their show? But our audience is enthused, committed, both here. Wednesday night, shout out to our radio audience. So I need to get better at doing this kind of housekeeping and promotion, which I'm absolutely lousy at. But anyhow, we are now going to roll the opening. I'll check in with the chat room while the opening is running. We'll bring on Emily, who really needs no introduction, and she has an amazing slideshow to share with you. She had quite an odyssey a couple months ago. So welcome to the show. So glad you're here. You're making a lot of things possible for not only myself and for Craig Ansel and our contributors, but also our guests who have been absolutely amazing in the past 6 months.
There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, the couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms.
All right, so I started to talk about ERT radio. This is what's still going on with this lingering COVID fog, which seems to be getting better in some ways and not better in other ways. ERT radio, 10 p.m. on Wednesday nights. We're very honored that those guys rebroadcast the show. That's wonderful, Ronald and his crew over there. So yeah, there was some good discussion about the merchandise from Lori and Michael. They both have it and enjoy it. And go to Redbubble. That seems, I think, really to be the place to go as a first choice. And there's nice merchandise on both. So without further ado, let's bring on our esteemed colleague tonight, my co-host for the evening, iTour contributor, Emily. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you. Feels like it's been forever.
It kind of has been forever. It's hard to get the RTC crew together, and then there were so many changes and shifts, and when everything opened up, everybody's busy because you're all amazing people, which is great. But two elements of distinction. You contributed to our logo, which is awesome, applying your skills as an artist, which is amazing. And also, of course, you will always have the distinction of being our very first guest ever.
Yes.
Which was cool.
No one can take that away.
So I think this is number 6 or 7, because we've done Red Thread Collectives, and then you joined us one night for a Mothman show. And I'd love to replay those shows because there's so much cool stuff going on in our lives with Mothman. I've decided to write a book about it called Mothman and Me, because we've met so many amazing people in these 13 years, all because of this really interesting cryptid. Has opened so many doors. But speaking of doors, you have a traveling spirit. So let's start with that. What is a traveling spirit?
Sure. So a traveling spirit is the name of my travel blog, which is travelingspirit.com. If you go there, you will notice I haven't written anything since December 31st, 2019. I do intend to bring the blog post back, but there's plenty of content before then of various trips that I had done in previous years. And the trip that I'll be talking about tonight is one that I hope to bring back to the blog in great detail as I have the time. But I am most active on Instagram, where I'm a traveling spirit 924. Someone already had a traveling spirit. That is not me. But a traveling spirit 924 on Instagram. And there I post much more often, usually of pictures from my travels. I'm very fortunate to be able to travel a lot through my day job. And it takes me often to California and everywhere in between. But I also love to do a lot of travel just on my own. And that is most of what you will see over on Instagram.
Cool. So a little sample tonight that I think is going to get you all very hungry for this. So there's the travelingspirit.com. And then also the Instagram. So I can't leave this Instagram up because Emily has put together a spectacular PowerPoint for us tonight. So we're going to bring that up, and she's basically going to take over. I'm going to be here. And so that you can really appreciate the pictures once she starts talking about each frame, and just let me know when to advance.
Sure.
So I'll be doing custodial work tonight. Secretary work, which is great. I love it.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So this was, I came up with this title, Road Tripping into High Strangeness with a Traveling Spirit. And let's move to the second one, and you can take over.
All right. So tonight, what I'm going to be telling everyone about is a road trip that I went on this past summer in July. I went by myself, with the exception of the creepy doll you see there in the rearview mirror. I'll tell you about her in a minute. But it basically kind of at a high level, I drove from West Virginia to California, made it all the way to the coast, to the Pacific Ocean and back. That was 6,000 miles, 20 tanks of gas. Let me tell you, in July, gas was not cheap.
I was thinking of
I
that.
just closed my eyes every time I was at the pump. It was 17 days spent on the road, drove through 11 states. And then had one creepy doll travel companion. So that lovely lady that you see in the photo there in the rearview mirror, she is sitting in the back seat of my Jeep there. Her name is Natalie, and the reason she went on this trip is because one of my friends that I visited on this trip in California, she gave me a lot of grief when I bought Natalie at an estate sale earlier this year. She said she was creepy. I don't want to see that thing. What are you doing with her? And Natalie, she is a doll. She's from the 1950s. Her faces spin. So she's got 3 different expressions. She's got this one, that's her happy expression. She's got a sleeping expression, and she's got a crying face. And so there's a little lever, and then her face will spin, and you can change what her face looks like. I think she's adorable. And so my friend that had given me all this grief, since I knew I was going to be seeing her, I told her, you know what, I'm going to bring Natalie along. And when I'm staying at your house, I'm going to put her in your bed when you're not with me. Which happened.
That's how you roll.
Exactly. So Natalie was my trusty road companion for all 6,000 miles of the trip. And you'll see her pop up in some of the photos in the slideshow tonight. But yeah, Natalie and I took off in, I think it was July 15th. And we headed west. We pretty much took 70 west all the way to Moab, Utah. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the more interesting roads that I got onto after 70 west. But yeah, you can go ahead and go to the next slide.
All righty.
So we're going to start off in Kansas. You may notice I skipped Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri. Not because those states aren't lovely, but because I have lived in the Midwest my whole life. And so I didn't really stop anywhere there to see anything other than for gas and food. So nothing really to report from those states. And honestly, I didn't think I'd really have anything to report on from Kansas either. Again, no offense to Kansas. But something that I saw as I was driving through the entirety of Kansas, straight across, was a billboard, bright neon green billboard on the side of the road for the Oz Museum. And I'm probably going to butcher this name, Wamego, Kansas. And so since I didn't really have a very much of a set itinerary, I decided to pull off, see what that was all about, and found this tiny little town of Wamego that was very cute. It had this Oz museum in the center of it, and it was an amazingly done museum. Inside, you can see it had replicas, life-size replicas of different characters and scenes from the movie. They had a bunch of vintage pieces that were, Wizard of Oz souvenirs that were, made at the time the movie came out. They had old, early editions of the books. And it was just amazing. They had such a great collection of items, and it was really well done. The reason I put this in here, because we are talking about high strangeness and, the paranormal. Now, most of you will not consider this high strangeness, but it is for me, which is the photo on the upper right, which is a drawing. It's very small, but it's a drawing of Miss Gulch, the Wicked Witch of the West, on her bike. And so for those of you who have seen the movie, I'm sure everybody's seen The Wizard of Oz. In the beginning, when it's the black and white part, and Miss Gulch is riding around on her bicycle, both before the tornado and then during the tornado, when Dorothy's in the room and the house is spinning around, she rides by the window on her bicycle. And to this day, that is the scariest part of any movie I've ever seen. I don't know why, but the black and white part of the movie with Miss Gulch riding on her bicycle has terrified me since I was very, very young. It still does. I'm even getting goosebumps talking about it now, thinking about it. And so there was a mural on the wall. They had like a little yellow brick road pathway in an alley in the town, and this was on the mural on the wall there. And so I had to take a picture and face my fear of that bicycle scene. But that's why I included this in here.
I am with you. Scariest movie ever to me, and yet I would watch it every year. And Miss Gulch is way scarier than the witch.
Oh yes,
way scarier than the witch.
Yes.
So I'm with you 100%, and that is super creepo when she comes pedaling through like a son of a gun. So awesome, cool. So very, very neat. Gonna move on.
Yeah.
There we go.
All right. So another slide in Kansas. Like I said, when I was driving through Kansas, I thought there's not going to be anything here. It's just flat and cornfields, but that is not true. I mean, that is true, but there are interesting things here. And one of them was Mount Sunflower. So something that I like to do when I travel, one, I like to look for paranormal, haunted, high strangeness, any type of thing like that. I also like to go to national parks or beautiful scenery. I love mountains, lakes. And then the third is I really like quirky things. So just stuff that you don't see every day. And Mount Sunflower, I think, would qualify as a quirky thing because Mount Sunflower is known as the highest point in Kansas. And as you can see, it's flat and nothing for miles. But it's about, I think it's maybe 3 or 4 miles from the Colorado border. So it's in far western Kansas. And it actually is, I think, about 4,000 feet elevation. It's just flat.
Wow.
And so I thought, oh, that's really funny. I want to go get my picture there. You can't really tell in that picture, but I had on like my hiking backpack with the water thing in it. And then I had a hiking pole, acting like I had hiked up to Mount Sunflower. And so I looked up how to get here, and it's actually on private property, but the people who own the property encourage visitors. And it takes about 30 minutes to get to off of 70. And you are driving on dirt roads like that one on the right. For all of that time. So as you're driving through, you've got all the dust kicking up behind you. You can hardly see. You won't see anyone out there. I think I saw one car in that entire, in the hour total round trip to get there and back out. So you're not going to see anybody out there. And it was just a fun, weird thing to do. And I'm really glad I did it. I recommend it to anyone else who's passing through Kansas and wants to see something unusual, which is a completely flat summit.
Yeah, Kansas gets such a bad rap. I had two professors, husband and wife team, that were from Kansas, and they were like dry as unbuttered toast. And so there's so much of that trope, Kansas and Iowa and all of that, but great little gems. And of course, everybody knows I'm a huge sunflower fan.
Oh yes,
so
sunflowers
what a
everywhere.
cool thing there. So very cool. So I want to ask you before we move on to the next one. So how much percentage-wise, let's just try to do a percentage-wise, is a planned itinerary? Okay, I have X amount of days and I'm headed to X destination. I want to see this, this, and this. And how much do you build in for the chance things that you were talking about?
Mm-hmm. So for this trip, I probably planned more than half, mainly because I was meeting up with some people at different places. So I had to be to those places at least by a certain date. And so that helped with planning my days leading up to those. Like there was some flexibility. There were a couple of places that we'll see in a couple of slides that I had to make a reservation at to make sure I got a room.
Gotcha.
So I was constrained a little bit by those, but especially on the way out, all the way to Denver, I just, like the first day, I just drove until I didn't feel like driving anymore and then found a hotel and stayed. And it was pretty much the same way on the way back too. But yeah, I would say maybe like 60% was planned.
I love it. That's a great formula. Angelina tells us she's from Iowa. Angelina, there's nothing dull and dry as toast about you, my friend. So there are plenty of exceptions. And I think that's the point. Like we never get to hear about the cool.
Right.
The cool stuff. So
I was very pleasantly surprised with Kansas.
There you go.
I did not drive through Iowa though.
Okay, here we go.
All right. So I got to Denver on the second day, late on the second day of my trip. And this was one hotel I booked. I've only booked it a couple days ahead of time, but I did want to make sure I got in. The hotel Teatro. It's right in downtown Denver. And the reason I wanted to book this hotel is because it's in a beautiful historical building that was built in 1911. And it's supposed to be haunted. So I was really anxious to stay here. It is a gorgeous building. I think it's only 8 stories. Brick building built in 1911. It was originally the office tower for the Denver Tramway Company office. And it actually didn't turn into a hotel until the late 90s, like 1999. I think it had served a few other purposes in between being the Denver Tramway Company office and other things. I think like the University of Denver had it for some, as part of their campus at some point in there, but it only became a hotel relatively recently, late 90s. But the pictures that I have here, like the U.S. mail chute that was on every floor, by the elevator. So if you had mail, you could just drop it down that chute. It goes all the way down to the bottom floor to be picked up. The ceiling, the middle picture with the light, is in the lobby of the hotel. It had all just that beautiful gilded work on the ceilings and, all around the borders. It was very ornate, very well taken care of. It was beautiful. And then the picture on the right is Natalie in our room, which overlooked downtown. And it was beautiful. And I didn't experience anything at the hotel. Really, the main story that I read about that folks often encounter when staying at this hotel is a guy that they call the tool man. Because he is basically like a maintenance man who comes around and fixes things, like actually fixes things for live hotel guests.
Oh.
But he himself is not alive. And they think that he was a former streetcar mechanic. So when the tramway offices were there, he would have spent a lot of time potentially around that building. And he died on the job. And so they believe that he is the one that is the very helpful maintenance ghost around this hotel.
I love that. And, I didn't mention, and folks, you've seen Emily on the show lots of times, but I want to remind you that she is a very top-notch paranormal researcher. I think a perfect skeptic, a great person to bounce things off of. And so a couple of quick observations. So I'm reading a book. It's the 3rd book about the ghosts of Cape May. And it's reminding me, and I was doing research from something else too. It reminded me of custodial staff, fix-it men, the people who built the houses. They have such an investment in the house that people often see them, even if it's if it's a residual haunting, which this sounds like it isn't. Such a large investment of those people being caretakers of the property. So I thought that was amazing. Have you found that other places that you've been to?
I have. As soon as you said that, like the maintenance men or the construction people that work on houses, I thought of the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California.
Oh, wow, yeah.
The gigantic home that Sarah Winchester paid to have built, with all the weird, like quirky rooms and staircases to nowhere and balconies that don't exist. You open the door and fall out a 2nd, 3rd story doorway. And there is a well-known ghost there that is of one of the construction crew, because I think she kept the same crew pretty much the whole time that she was building on that house. And so they were like family to her. They were there all the time. They worked on the house for years and years. And I know one of the well-known ghosts there is supposed to be one of those construction people.
Yeah, I love that. I just think it's so cool. So the second question I want to ask before we move on is Tanya and I had an interesting thing happen. So of course, and I want to couch this really carefully. I've been thinking about it. You and I have stayed at the Low Hotel at the same time. I didn't want to say you and I have stayed at the Low Hotel together many times. That's how rumors get started. But and they're very open about it, and it's sort of a selling point. And so Tanya and I went to a bed and breakfast here in Ohio, And in doing our research about it, we weren't going there because it was haunted, but there was a little bit of talk about it. And then Tanya, in looking at the rooms and choosing which one she wanted us to stay in, was like, oh, there's this and this and this and this. So after doing this for over a decade, I said to the woman, oh, and we're paranormal investigators and authors, and we understand that the place is, and there was like silence on the line. So when we showed up, she said, oh, you're the paranormal people or whatever.
Yeah.
And I said, let me just tell you, that's not why we're here. And I feel really bad. What had happened was someone had gone to the place, operated all kinds of equipment in the house all night, recorded people's conversations. And then at breakfast the next morning, which is the high point of a bed and breakfast for a lot of people, were telling people everything they had seen and all. Then they took their footage and they put it online and kind of. So what is your procedure, if you will, when you go to these places?
So if you'd asked me 10 years ago, it would be very different than what it is now. 10 years ago, I probably would have taken all of my equipment, voice recorder, EMF detector, K2 meter, laser grid, anything you could think of. I probably would have taken everything. On this trip, I didn't take anything. And even, in recent years and in travel, knowing that I'm going to allegedly haunted places, I don't really take anything. I've come to, I find that my own experiences are enough for me to validate whether or not I think a place is haunted.
Yeah.
And, even if anything, I might take a voice recorder just to have that going to hear if they're weird sounds or sounds that weren't there when I was recording. But yeah, now I just like to go and kind of walk around and try to feel the building, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Feel its energy and, just see if there's anything around and, that wants to come out and make contact. So I have a much more passive approach now than I did in years past. And I feel like it really adds to the experience being in a place like this, because if you're always fiddling with equipment, or, trying to write stuff down and, exchanging, information with the people that you're with, kind of takes away from just being there and experiencing, because you're trying to do so many other things. Like I've learned I'm not great at multitasking anymore. And so kind of going and just exploring and taking everything in and getting a real sense for the building and perhaps its occupants is kind of the route that I go now.
I agree. You really need to know the architecture of a place. That was the beauty of 150 hours in the web. We knew where all the electrical boxes were. We knew where the ducts were. We knew where the creaky places in the floor were. We knew things that would tend to open and close, or where shadows tended to, or even the glass that had the ripples in it that made it look like in pictures that there were faces. The most profound experiences that I've had since the web was when we were up in Niagara Falls a couple Decembers ago, and I saw a little girl in the dining room. I just saw her. She was there. And I think, not that we would bring all that equipment to a dining room, but if we had that equipment, I probably wouldn't have seen her. Yep. She probably wouldn't have shown herself to me. And I just said to Tanya, there's a little girl, I think, there, and she's got a yellow gingham dress and blonde hair. And she's like, oh yeah, she's dancing around. And I'm like, no, she's being real shy for me. And so I think when you get past the point that you're looking to prove anything, and it's been proven to you, then you simply be, and you do it for your own. And we can still write about it in books. And if we don't have the triangulation of data and people, then discount it, I guess that's okay. Yeah. So,
and nothing against using equipment, but for me, I just find I am not as present if I'm trying to fiddle with a bunch of stuff. And all of that.
All right. So far-ranging conversation. I love it.
Yeah. All right. So beyond Denver, My next stop was going to be Moab, Utah, which is where Arches National Park is, among other things. But I passed through on the way there. Georgetown actually came first. Georgetown, Colorado, which is that bottom middle picture, and the one on the left. It's just gorgeous, as you can see. I wish I had had time to actually stop there and do stuff. I think they had a railroad that you could take, like a scenic railroad through those mountains and around the water. It's absolutely beautiful. And a couple miles from Georgetown, I can't remember if it was further west or before you get to Georgetown, there is a Sasquatch casino. I did not know about this beforehand. Otherwise, I would have stopped or stayed there because I think it was a hotel as well. But all of a sudden, I just started seeing all these signs with Bigfoot on them, all these billboards. And I was like, wait a minute, what's that? So that is on my list to visit next time. But it is in that like Georgetown, Colorado area, which is west of Denver. And then Glenwood Springs, which is the top photo, and the photo on the right is another town that you pass through, definitely further west in Colorado. And I was ready to just park and go find a place to live and stay and never leave because it was so beautiful. I mean, the mountains are majestic. You can kind of see in that top photo a building, and that is the Hotel Colorado. So something that Glenwood Springs is known for are its hot springs. That photo on the right is a hot spring pool that I think is part of the Hotel Colorado. It's right in front of it, so I assumed it was part of it. And you could book times to go in and sit in the pool or swim in the pool that is from a hot spring. And so there's lots of hot springs, it seemed, in the town. They also had vapor caves, which I had never heard of. But apparently you go in and it's like some holistic kind of healing to go into these vapor caves that are in the sides of these mountains. Again, I did not research Glenwood Springs before I went. I just happened to pass through it. I needed to Target. There's one there. And then I came upon this gorgeous town and discovered all this. So I definitely need a return trip here. But that Hotel Colorado that's there in the top photo, it is a giant, imposing building that I thought, oh, that has to be haunted because it looks very old. And so sure enough, I researched it after the fact, and it is. So I think it was built in the late 1800s, and it's a hotel now. It did serve as a naval hospital and morgue during World War II. One of the ghosts that folks see at the hotel is of a nurse named Bobby. And Bobby was a nurse when it was a naval hospital and was killed by a jealous lover. And so they think that this nurse that they see and smell, her scent, I think it was gardenia, is reported a lot. And so they attribute that to Bobby, the nurse. There's also Walter, who is the hotel's founder. And he seems like a very friendly, jovial ghost. He likes to go walk around the lobby, kind of wander the halls. He smells like cigar smoke, which they don't allow smoking in there. So there wouldn't be a reason for cigar smoke, and just seems to be kind of looking over the place. And then there were a couple of weird stories that I came across of people who things that happened in the basement of the hotel, which was where the morgue was. One was that a worker was down there and he saw, so I guess in the basement there's windows and then the window well outside of them, so if you open the window, there's a well there and then you could get to the outside. But apparently the window wells were very deep, like almost like you'd have to have a ladder to get in and out of them.
Oh, wow.
That person couldn't just climb in and out. And so he was walking along and saw a woman in the window, like in the well, peering through the window like this, like looking in. And he thought, oh my gosh, she must have fallen in. Like what happened? He went to get the light and turned it on. And nobody there, of course.
Wow.
And then other accounts from the basement were hearing women, like two women talking to each other and the sounds of a typewriter, like an old typewriter, and coming from, I think it was from one of the offices that was down there. And I think it was on a tour group, actually, that they heard this and then opened the door to see who was in there because it wasn't a room that was being used for anything. Opened it up and not a single thing in there.
I
and
love it.
voices and typewriter sound gone.
I love those kind of residuals where
Mhm.
the work just carries on. It was either
Yep.
really important work or they were committed to the work or something that they did every day at a certain time but it then still why do you only hear it at certain times is one of the
Right.
great mysteries. Yeah.
Exactly.
So isn't the Stanley Hotel in Colorado?
It is. It's in Estes Park.
Yeah, there's
And
something about these big,
I know.
massive hotels in Colorado that's just so intriguing.
I know. I wanted to stay there too on this trip, but the timing and those rooms do sell out. So
Yeah.
I was not quick enough to be able to get one of
Your
those.
photo on the left panel kind of
Mhm.
looks like that. It would be a drone shot today,
Yep.
but an airplane shot of the beginning of. We just watched The Shining, where
Oh
they're going
yeah.
up the hill.
Yep.
Yeah, so very cool. You want to move on?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. We don't need to spend long on this slide, but knowing the audience, I figured I should let you know that if you are driving on 70 through Utah, the junction where you get off of 70, so this is the first time I left 70 in the entire trip, and I don't remember what road it is to get to Moab, but Jackass Joe's will be right there. You cannot miss it. It is neon green. You can see it from the highway. And it is a gas station and beef jerky store.
Okay.
When you go inside, they have a lot. I mean, they've got regular convenience store things, but they have walls and walls of Bigfoot and alien themed jerky. And this proved to be a theme. We'll see a little bit more of that in a few slides. But it was just a super cool place to stop. The inside, it's got aliens, it's got Bigfoot. It's all like bright colors and neon colors, and it was just a fun stop. So if you need the restroom, if you need food, if you need beef jerky or gas, stop here.
Nice. Very
Yeah.
good. All right.
Right. Okay.
Oh,
So
wow.
about 40 miles from Jackass Joe's is this, which is Arches National Park. And it is right outside the city of Moab in Utah. And this was probably the top spot on my list to go on this trip. Nothing paranormal about it. It was just a beautiful park that I haven't been to before. I wanted to do hiking. I wanted to do astrophotography. And so Arches was the place I had to get to on this trip, no matter what. And so the thing though about this park is obviously it's beautiful. There's tons to do. There's all these incredible arches and rock formations. That's just out in the middle of nowhere. And it's beautiful, but the energy there is unlike anything I have ever felt. Of course, I was traveling by myself. You see these nighttime photos. That means I was by myself in the middle of nowhere taking these photos. I was hiking by myself and I felt so safe, almost like kind of being watched over by some like guardian of the land. I don't know how to describe it. It just felt like a very spiritual experience. The entire time I was there, I spent 2 days there because I wanted to make sure to see as much as possible. And something about this area of the country, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, it has such there are so many Native Americans there and have been there in the past, and they have such respect for the land and take such good care of the land. And I feel, every time I've been to the Southwest, I just have this sense of peace when I'm out in, the more remote places like this. It just feels like someone has loved this land for so long, and that energy almost just radiates out of it. So this visit was so peaceful, and I just felt really safe. Like that's the best way I can describe it. So even though it's not like high strangeness or paranormal, it was definitely spiritual.
Nice. And that's, we did an episode on high strangeness in Nevada and Utah. And of course, you have everything from Skinwalker Ranch to possibly
Mhm.
Dulce to certainly Area 51 and S4 Groom Lake, whatever you want to call it, and planes going in and out and all. So it's this weird dynamic tension between that custodianship of the land, and I think the vortex energies and the ley lines that drew those cultures, drew those tribes there in the first place, and then this more nefarious co-opting of wide open spaces where nobody, and bomb tests, right? So you have the so so it's lovely to know that there are places where the spiritual and the historical and the peaceful are definitely winning.
For sure.
And that they still exist. So that's awesome.
Yep.
Awesome and beautiful photos. You want to move on, or?
Yeah, we can go to the next
one.
So Canyonlands National Park, it's about 40 miles from Arches. So it's pretty close. And I had gone there mainly for sunrise. So again, I was there driving out there at like 4 a.m. in the dark. There's nothing out there at all. I don't think I saw anyone else on the road going into the park. You know, it's not even open yet. Well, there's not a ranger there yet, so you can just drive right in. There were people at the sunset spot or sunrise spot that I went to, but not maybe 20, 25 people there. But again, it just felt very serene out there. I didn't feel ever in danger. I didn't really feel nervous about being out there in the middle of nowhere in the dark by myself. It just felt very well cared for and respected. However, I learned afterwards, so the pictures, well, pretty much all these pictures, yes, all these pictures were from the spot that I was at Mesa Arch, I think it's called, for the sunrise. So took a bunch of pictures, and then by the time I was done, it was like 6:30 in the morning. So I still had plenty of time to drive around the park. And so I just kind of did the loop around one section of the park. And I saw one person the entire time. I was probably there for 2 hours, maybe, driving around. And I got out of, there's turnouts that you can get out and pull over and get out and take pictures. The only person that I saw was at one of the turnouts that I had pulled off to, and we were both out taking pictures, and I was wearing my WVU hat. And he looks at me and he said, "Are you from Morgantown?" And I said, "Well, yeah, nearby." And he said, "I went to WVU. I lived in Morgantown in the 70s. And so what are the odds that, one, I wouldn't see anybody else, and two, the one person I did see was from Morgantown or had lived there.
Yeah.
So it was, I mean, I know the WVU family is very large, but it just seemed odd that out of everyone, something we had in common. But something I found out afterwards in doing some research on Canyonlands, because I didn't see nearly enough of it, is that it is actually known for some high strangeness, being time slips. And the stories are that people often experience. Now, I don't know if this is what I would consider a time slip necessarily, but this is how they refer to it, of the same moment, like looping over and over again, like it keeps happening. And I thought I don't know that I've ever heard that claim anywhere, much less at a lovely national park. So I thought that was really interesting, and I don't think I experienced that while I was there. But who knows?
Tanya, if you're still with us, I hope you are. Rosemary had less traditional and more extensive definitions of what a time slip would be. Do you recall that being an aspect of it? I remember we were on a road trip, probably going to Point Pleasant, and I was reading one of her books in the passenger seat to you, and she was specifically talking about time slips. It faintly feels so. So let us know as we move on, babe, please.
Yeah, I'd
Thank
be
you.
interested.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
So yeah. Next is Dead Horse Point State Park, which is very close to Canyonlands. I went here after Canyonlands. This picture is probably like 9 o'clock in the morning. And so this, I wanted to, one, it's beautiful, of course. But I wanted to go here to pay my respects because Dead Horse Point is allegedly so named because that part that juts out in the middle with like the cliff going down. So that's the Green River. I mean, it's not the Green River, but the river going around it, the green part, and then that part, that's sticking out is the Dead Horse Point. And it is called that because I think in the 1800s, cowboys around this area would round up wild Mustangs and like corral them and take the ones that they wanted and, sell them, use them, and then let the others go. And apparently, for some unknown reason, they corralled a bunch of wild Mustangs on that point and took the ones they wanted and just left the others penned in on there. And they wound up all dying of dehydration because they couldn't get out of how they had been corralled in on top of there, which I think is obviously awful. And can you imagine dying of dehydration not that far from a river flowing beneath you? So I can't imagine those poor horses trapped up there. But they say that is why it is named Dead Horse Point. And some of the stories about it are that people will often see a single white horse standing at the end of that point by itself.
I believe it.
Yeah. So I just wanted to go and kind of take a moment there. That hurts my heart to know that animals were treated that way. But obviously it's also very beautiful. And it had a fairly pleasant energy for what had happened there. So it was still a pleasant walk to get out here. And then there's gorgeous scenery all around, within the park. But yeah, definitely wanted to stop here and pay my respects.
Right. Okay.
All right. Goblin Valley. And Natalie.
Look at that cutie. There's nothing creepy about her.
To my friend and said, "We're in Utah. We're coming for you." And she texted back and said, "Natalie has the face that says, I just buried a body out here."
See, I don't see it at all. I think she's just the cutest little thing.
She is. I love her. So Goblin Valley is, I'm trying to think, it was between, I went there between Moab and Torrey, Utah, which is where Capitol Reef National Park is, which I think is the next slide. But Goblin Valley is just a state park, again, in the middle of nowhere. And it is truly in the middle of nowhere. I think it's a designated dark sky park, meaning you have no light pollution at night. So if you were to do astrophotography or stargazing, would be incredible. I think you would have to camp though. There's no hotels or anything. I'm not a camper. Certainly not going to camp by myself. So I did not get to see the night sky here, but I did get to see the beautiful, beautiful scenery. And like, even looking back at these pictures now, they almost look fake, especially with the clouds the way they were. And it looked fake in person too. Like it looks exactly like what the pictures are. And it looked fake. Like I kept thinking, what? That sky is incredible. And then against the like sandstone, and amazing. But the Goblin Valley State Park, it's named for, so that bottom left photo, that landscape photo, those are hoodoos. And they are just like these sandstone structures. And there's a couple on that top left, and then on the top right. And there are thousands of them in this valley. And it was just open. You could just walk in and walk all around in between them, take pictures. Something I should mention, the entire time I was in Utah, it was about 107 degrees every day. So I did a lot of hiking almost all day, every day. So it was, I probably didn't do as much exploring as I would have liked to, simply due to how hot it was.
Yeah.
And out in the open desert, you get real hot real quick. But Goblin Valley is just incredible. It's just such different landscapes than at least out here in West Virginia and the Midwest where I grew up. we don't have any of this out here. And that one photo that's the top, it's the one to the right of Natalie. I don't know what that rock formation is. It wasn't in Goblin Valley, but it was nearby in, I think it's called Hanksville is the town. And what I had read about Hanksville, one, there's nothing there. But two, it looks like it's from another planet. And that structure, like, I don't even know what it, like, is that a mountain? Is that, what is it? And it just had like these weird straight lines going across it. And it's just such an odd shape. And it truly did look like all of the Goblin Valley area looked like another planet for sure.
Do you know where the name comes from, Goblin Valley?
I don't know. I've read that like the hoodoos are also called goblins.
Oh, neat. Okay, that's
so maybe
cool.
there. I don't know if that's the official where it came from, but I've heard people refer to them as goblins and as toadstools.
Nice. Oh, yeah. Well, that makes sense. Some of those sculptures are so precarious.
Right.
And I think there was a thing. Do you remember when people were putting up the fake monoliths around?
Mm-hmm.
One of them, I think, in particular, some of these very precarious natural sculptures, I think, were destroyed, which is, that's where the respect comes in, which you're showing a lot of respect.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Go to the next one. Capitol Reef National Park. I don't know about all of you, but I had not heard of this place until very recently. I didn't even realize it was a national park. And as I was researching my trip for Utah, I was trying, because I wanted to do Bryce and Zion as well, because there's 5 national parks in Utah, but my time was going to only allow me to do 3. And so Capitol Reef made the most sense because it was on the way. And the other 2 would have been a little bit out of the way. And so as I was researching it, everybody was saying, oh, if you've got to skip one, skip Capitol Reef. No, there's nothing to see there. And I thought, well, I'm just going to go anyway. And it was stunning. I don't know if these people went to the wrong place or if they like went in a different end of the park and didn't go I don't know. But Capitol Reef was amazing. And what's really interesting about it, or I thought was interesting about it, is, again, middle of nowhere. There's nothing around. But there's basically a ghost town within it. Well, there might be several. So the area obviously has the mountains and the rock formations, but it's also kind of like a little oasis almost, like you see all the green there. And that's because it is still they've got operating orchards there. And it used to be the town that was there in the 1800s. I want to say it was a Mormon settlement. They had a little town called Fruta, I think it was called. And a family basically just set up there and had a little town. That little building on the bottom left, I believe, was a schoolhouse. And it's just in the middle of this national park, just sitting there in front of a gorgeous rock formation. And so there's like this little village with all the old structures still there within this national park. Some of the structures they have repurposed and are using again. There's a house that's there. It's called the Gifford House. If you go, you must go early and go by their freshly made pies. It's not made with the fruit from the orchard, but they are made locally. I got 2 of them. They were amazing, but they sell out really quickly. So definitely get the pies at Capitol Reef. And then around the Gifford House, there's also like an old barn that they've set up with, some of the original implements. They've got a lot of animals there. I saw like they have farm animals, but they also saw tons of deer, of course. Saw a bunch of marmots running around. They have marmot crossing signs, and no joke, I went past a marmot crossing sign and I immediately saw a marmot crossing the road. So they're also very accurate, apparently.
Very cool.
Yeah, so it was just a really unique landscape with a lot of history, and then that cool little ghost town just popped in there. And then the very far right picture, which Natalie's in there, she's small, but she's there, of the covered wagon. That's where I stayed. So there's a little town outside of the park called Torrey, and it's got several hotels there, so plenty of places to stay. But this particular hotel had a covered wagon option. And so, of course, I had to stay in the covered wagon. Had electricity. It was very comfortable, and I had a great time. So if you're ever in the Torrey, Utah area, I think it was the Broken Spur Resort is the name of the hotel. They have a regular hotel too, and then they have the covered wagons.
Covered wagon glam camping. Who
Yes.
knew?
Yes, not me.
My bride wants to stay in the covered wagon. We'll have to
honey, you
do
would
that,
love it.
babe.
You would love it. It was so much fun.
Very cool. All right. Oh, cool.
Yeah. All right, Nevada. Now here's where the high strangeness comes in.
Mhm.
So I'm sure you can imagine. So going from Capitol Reef, my next stop was going to be Tonopah, Nevada. That was a very, very long day of driving with, again, nothing. The cities out there are so few and far between in Utah. And then when you get to Nevada, unless you're by Reno or Las Vegas,
Yeah.
nothing. And this is a picture of a building that I thankfully came across. I've probably been driving for 2 hours with absolutely no services, no restrooms, nothing. And this building popped out of nowhere, and I immediately pulled in praying that they had a restroom, which they did. And it is an alien themed beef jerky shop. Kind of
Oh my
like
gosh,
that.
another beef jerky shop.
Yes. Yes. But these all had alien themes. They also had some like general convenience items and a restroom. I thought, what is it with the paranormal themed beef jerky out here? And I saw multiple other places in Nevada where it's like literally the only thing for miles, and it's a beef jerky place. So
Wow.
I don't know. And I asked the woman who was the cashier what town we were in. She's like, we're not. I was like, oh, well, what's the nearest town? And she's like, well, you got Rachel 45 minutes away, which is, of course, where
Wow.
you want to go to the next slide, where the little
You got it.
alien is, and is near Area 51.
Okay.
And the famous extraterrestrial highway sign. So I call this Rachel and Area 51-ish because yes, it's in the vicinity of Area 51. Since I was by myself, I was not going to attempt to go like to the sign where it tells you like if you go past here, it's not going to be good.
Yeah.
So I was kind of careful with that because Nevada is so desolate. Like that picture of me, I just pulled over on the side of the highway and I had to take a picture of myself. The actual picture's a lot bigger to show that there's absolutely nothing except sky and mountains. And, you know, you could be driving on the road in Nevada for an hour or two at a time and see no one, no towns. But Rachel, Nevada, if you can call it a town, is along the extraterrestrial highway, as they call it. And do you remember back in 2019 when they were going to do the Storm Area 51 in
Yes.
September? And I don't know what show I was listening to, but it was like, I don't know if it was the mayor of Rachel or just a citizen who called in to say, please do not come. You don't understand. There is literally nowhere to stay in Rachel. There's nowhere to stay outside of Rachel. You will be miserable. Do not come. We cannot support you. There's no food. There's no nothing. He was not kidding. There was maybe like 10 houses that I saw. There's Little Alien, which is that building there on the bottom right. I did go in there. It's a restaurant. And then I think they have rooms that you can stay in, but it was not a big building. So there would be very limited availability if people did go there. And that was pretty much it. That was Rachel. So the gentleman who called begging people not to storm Area 51 and come to Rachel was not lying. There's nothing there. There are no services nearby. There are no hotels nearby. I don't even think there's a gas station. So I don't know where they must have to fill up with gas, 50 miles away.
Yeah.
So it was a little disconcerting being out that far out in the middle of nowhere because you would keep seeing the signs like next service is 100 miles. And you were not going to see anything for
Yeah.
for 100 miles. So always, if you're driving across Nevada, anytime you see a gas station, fill up. Every time you see a restroom, go, because you're not going to see another one for a while.
There you go. And that's why the government's got all the goodies there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's the perfect place to hide stuff. It is just massive.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah. So Goldfield, Nevada, this is near Tonopah, which will be on the next slide. But I went to Goldfield just to pass through because I wanted to see the Goldfield Hotel. And this hotel has been, I know it's been featured on Ghost Adventures multiple times. I think it's the place that kind of got them their start. And I'm sure I've seen it on other shows. But it's a very imposing hotel that was built during the gold rush in Nevada. And it was owned by a man named George Wingfield. And he was a very wealthy man. He had a mistress, Elizabeth, who became pregnant with his child. And the rumor is that he chained her to a radiator within the hotel in one of the hotel's rooms, fed her, basically kept her alive until the baby was born, and then killed them both because neither was ever seen again. And just a horrific story. And that's kind of I think the main ghost story around the Goldfield Hotel. There's a couple others, a woman who hanged herself in the hotel, a man who jumped from the roof of the hotel. So just a kind of a dark past. And the town of Goldfield itself, again, very, very small, very, very remote. Went here kind of at sunset, as you can see by the colors, and glad I went, but I don't think it was open. It seems like the ownership may have changed. They used to do tours, but it did not look at all functioning for anything when I was there. So only got to see the outside.
That garage is very cool. Talk about out of time.
Yeah, that was across the street.
You know, I just have to say, and I'm watching the time and I want to get through all the slides, but when this first came up, I immediately went Cecil Hotel, which it doesn't. So it must be a quality of the energy or something. Because when you were talking about, but this person hung themselves and this person, it's interesting how some of these hotels have, and they've done statistics, like my dad, who is in naval intelligence, says you can make them say anything you want. But some people say, well, the Cecil, if you look at the number of rooms and the number of years and the number of people, it's not really a statistical anomaly, the number of suicides and murders and disappearances. But other people will say, oh, no, it is a statistical anomaly.
Yeah.
So it's just weird that when this came up, I thought that, and then you were talking about that sort of dark history.
I've been to the Cecil Hotel. That'll be a topic for another show.
Oh, yes, please. Yeah. Yeah, I bet. That'd be great.
And speaking of hotels, this is the one I stayed at in Tonopah, Nevada. The world famous Clown Motel, also featured on Ghost Adventures. It is, as the name implies, full of clowns. The lobby is just wall-to-wall clowns. You can see some that are like on the shelves there. They've got large clowns. They've got scary clowns. They're everywhere. You can get rooms that are very clown heavy. I just got a normal room, so it only had a couple pictures of clowns, like the one that Natalie is shown against there. You could get rooms that are like, they've got Exorcist themed rooms and Friday the 13th themed rooms where it's all like things painted on the walls. If you can handle a couple of pictures of non-scary clowns, you can stay here for like $80 a night. It was super cheap. But I actually didn't really care about the hotel so much. What I cared about was on the next slide.
Oh, okay. You got it. I just want to say that Tanya said, "Oh, hell no." And Lori said, "No, no, no." I've
gotten to these pictures.
So you're intrepid adventurers who for almost over an hour now have been saying, "Yeah, let's go, let's go, let's go." Emily goes to places the rest of you won't dare. So there we go.
But this is why I wanted to stay at the Clown Motel, because this cemetery is like on the property. And so the old Tonopah Cemetery, you can see the years there, it was from 1901 to 1911. And so very old cemetery. And I think kind of what I think of Old West cemeteries. You can see in the picture on the left where it's got the like rectangles of stones around the graves to mark them, which I always love seeing that. And so this cemetery, I think it has about 300 people buried here. And a lot of them were people who died in 1911 in the Belmont mine fire was in Tonopah, which of course would be a horrible way to die. There is something interesting about the headstones here, and I learned this after the fact, is that so a lot of them have the causes of death on the headstone.
Yeah.
Like the one that's it got the blue sky behind it, that was Lillian, and she died, I think, after being drugged before her jewelry was stolen. I saw one where a gentleman fell off the back of a wagon and then got run over by it. Of course, there were tons that were, from the mine fire. And I learned, though, that those descriptions of how they died were added after the fact. They weren't actually there when the people were buried. The Preservation Society had come along and started adding those to some of these graves. So it was really interesting to walk through. And oddly enough, it felt very, and with, keep in mind the Clown Motel is right behind you. And, many of these people died horrible deaths, but it felt very peaceful. And I really enjoyed walking around there. I walked around at sunset, as you can see by many of these pictures. I walked around after dark, and then I walked around the following morning, and I just felt, I don't know, it felt, I hope it was the feeling that all of the people buried here were at peace, but it was not what I was expecting. I was not expecting it to be so pleasant.
Now, I want to ask you something, and I'm going to do a little experiment here. No. Okay, so everybody just bear with me for a second. Did you do anything to this photo?
No.
That is just gorgeous. Like. That is just gorgeous. Look at that sky, folks. Emily sent me several choices to advertise the show tonight that I use for the event pages. And this is just absolutely breathtaking and no effects added. Wow.
Yeah.
It's just amazing when you get away from the light pollution and every other kind of pollution.
I mean,
what it's like.
It was, I was so in awe of that sunset. It was incredible.
So I just wanted to go back to that. And I think this is the next one. Let me make sure. No. So I think here we go. So Virginia City.
Yep. Virginia City, Nevada. This is up kind of near Reno, Nevada, and Truckee. So Truckee, California, which is where I was going to visit my friend to put Natalie in her bed. And Virginia City was really cool. It's been featured on all of the ghost shows because it's an Old West town. It is so cute. I wish I had known how much I would fall in love with it, because I would have meant to stay the night here, but I didn't. I just passed through for a couple hours in an afternoon. But you've got the Old Washoe Club, the Silver Queen Motel, the Piper Opera House, like every building on this street. And it's one of those like wood plank line streets too. Like it's so cool. Every building had a story about hauntings that had happened there. And, it was so, I mean, you really felt like you were in the Old West. Everything is pretty much as it was, in the late 1800s. And it was just beautiful. And it's high up in the mountains. And this was a place where I stopped. When I got there, I stopped at the coffee shop that was in town and was sitting out back, enjoying the mountain view, drinking my coffee. And a gentleman came up to me and started talking to me. And I pretty much learned his entire life story. He was delightful. But one of the things he told me was, because he was asking where I was coming from, and I told him, and he said, oh, so you drove through the hills down there. And I knew exactly what he was talking about, because on the way up the mountain to Virginia City, you go through these very windy roads through kind of like the foothills. They're very narrow. You have to go like 25 miles an hour because they're so windy, and they've got all this very lush, like trees and shrubs, beautiful. And as I was driving through, I thought, this just seems so out of place for where I am in Nevada, but it just felt so peaceful. And he said that area is said to have had, Native Americans put spells on that area to make it magical.
Mhm.
I'm paraphrasing, but something to that effect. And I was like, oh, well, that explains the feeling that I had driving through there. It was just kind of like, oh, this is so beautiful and so weird. I love it. And it was very bizarre. But
That's neat.
definitely a
Energetic
cool place.
intention.
Mm-hmm.
So neat. That is very cool. Let's see if I can get the. Yeah, I will just do that so people could see the title as you set it up.
Oh, okay. All right. So still Nevada. This is on the way back. So we're a little out of, I put these a little out of order. I want to keep all of Nevada together.
Mhm.
But US Route 50 going across Nevada, I think it's about 400 miles, and it's known as the loneliest road in America. And let me tell you, it is. There's some photos there from as I was driving or as I pulled over. I think there were maybe 2 very small towns along the road. So 400 miles, how long did that take? That must have been like 6 hours. And when you finally get to, I think it's Eli, Ely is how it's spelled, Nevada, at the far eastern side of Nevada, you see this sign that's there in the middle that says you made it. And I don't know if you can tell, but the restroom people, they're like crossing their legs because they have to go to the bathroom.
Oh, nice.
There's been nothing for probably 200 miles.
Wow.
And so that was me by the time I got to this town of Eli after driving through absolute beautiful nothingness for hours on end. And I came across the Hotel Nevada, which is that picture on the right, which is also a haunted hotel. And I thought, oh, you know what? I'm just going to stop here. I wasn't planning to stop so early, but I was like, nope, I'm done. I cannot drive on this road anymore. I'm going to stay at this cute old hotel. Nothing happened there, but it was definitely historic. And just, again, it kind of looked like a little old West town. So very cute stop. If you were ever out that way.
Nice. And our final.
Yay! Donner Lake, California. So I did make it all the way out to California, made it all the way out to the Pacific Ocean, just so I could say that I did. But Donner Lake is in northern-ish California, kind of at the border with Nevada, so near the Reno, Nevada area, if you're familiar with it. And of course, this is the area where the ill-fated Donner Party, many of them died. Many of them resorted to cannibalism, not by choice, but by necessity. So not a good scene. And this area is beautiful, as you can see from the scenery there. But I've been to this area many times, and I love it. But it also there's an energy to it. I will say.
Oh, I bet.
And it's kind of heavy, but the beauty helps to make up for that. And so just a really interesting and beautiful area to explore if you have the time. And there's our last photo of Natalie there, laying on my friend's couch.
Yes.
So
Natalie, nice.
That was Natalie making it to her final intended stop on this trip.
Natalie didn't show any of her other faces. Do you tend to change them out?
I think she's got her sleeping face on in that one.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
I don't know that I put her crying face on at all.
Well, spectacular. Yeah, spectacular trip. So the Donner Party, like I mentioned, we just watched The Shining, and they have that conversation. You mean they ate each other up? It's okay. He saw it on the TV. Yep. And he said, Jack says, no, I think that was a little further west from here. It's quite a bit further west. So cool. So I'm going to drop this out. And I want to thank you for sharing your travel log with us.
Thank you for having me. It was fun to relive.
We need an iTour field trip. See, everybody keeps saying that. But I'm going to side with Emily, and I'm going to say it's Clown Hotel or nothing. So that has to be on the. So, but that was really interesting to kind of. Actually, what does Tanya say here? She maybe was crying at the Clown Hotel. There you go. Sorry, babe. You can spend an extra night in the covered wagon, and we'll come and pick you up. but got to do the Clown Motel. But that was very interesting. So I think of in Fairmont, right? There was the Farmington mine disaster, which I know pretty intimately, having lived there for a number of years, seeing a play about it and hearing the oral history. You have the Clown Motel, so you have, and we know from the Greene County Historical Society and other places, when you have these effigies of people, so clowns and mannequins and marionettes and things like that, they come with their energy, and yet overall you found it so peaceful. I think that's really neat.
I do too.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So again, thank you so much for your time. Guys, remember it's a Traveling Spirit 924?
Yep.
Oh, good. The COVID fog's going away. Traveling Spirit 924 on Instagram. Plus, to be truthful, that's one of my favorite Instagram pages, so I know it well. And travelingspirit.com. Keep checking in because there's plenty of material there. So Emily's giving you a chance to all catch up, which I think is very nice.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Before she repopulates it. So that's very, very cool. Thank you again, my friend. We hope to see you before the winter breaks.
Definitely.
We'll talk about that. All good love to Devin.
And to Tanya. Or I can tell you myself, Tanya. You're here.
There you go. She says, great show. Thanks, Emily. Mark says, Emily rocks. You certainly do. Lori says, thanks, Emily and Joey. Great show. Take care. Oh, just stay with us for the outro. Everybody, we've run an hour and 15 minutes. I'm going to let you go. We have Wes Roberts returning to the show to talk about his alien abduction experiences. We're going to talk about his 2 books where he really postulates why him, maybe why are they doing this? And I think it's going to be a very profound show because, Emily, you'll probably agree, that's the big question, right? We know that the military of they're evil and they want to destroy us and we have to weaponize the entire universe. Doesn't ring true, but yet we have these abductions and forced hybridizations and experiments. And so everybody tune in, and Wes and I are going to try to hopefully work through some of this and maybe tease out some things that are of value to the conversation. So everybody take care. Tanya says, Emily can't wait to see you. So I'll have to figure that out. Have a good night, everyone. Take care. Be safe. Enjoy your weekend. We've been freezing cold here, and we're going to get a burst of 70s. Oh, and Emily, we're going to Cincinnati for the weekend.
Aww,
so I'm going to be hanging out at the Ohio River.
Oh, have fun.
Yeah, but that's Emily's old haunt. She loves it. And yeah, I'm really excited and going to have dinner down on the river and check it out and see what's what. See what's up. So take care.